With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Limestone Farms bourbons are like a secret portal to a world of rich flavors where high proof meets smooth satisfaction. Every barrel is meticulously crafted and blended with a specific message in mind. Experience clean delineated flavor profiles that will have you engaged from the first sip to the final drop, making your palate beg for just one more taste. Limestone Farms, bringing heritage home.
We're all familiar with finishing bourbon in wine barrels, but finishing in a rosé cask, now we're venturing into uncharted territory. For Penelope Bourbon, that uncharted territory lies in the southern Rhone region of France. Their rosé cask finish marries Penelope's straight bourbon whiskey with French Grenache rosé wine cask. The result is a unique aromatic blend of strawberry, floral, and herbal flavors. Take a sip of this one-of-a-kind bourbon at penelopebourbon.com.
Hotel Distill raises a glass to Louisville's bourbon past by bringing refinement and luxury to the famed Whiskey Row. At Hotel Distill, guests will step into a modern space through a historic facade where gracious service and modern amenities flow like the bourbon once barreled on our historic site. Behind the storied facade of the former JTS Brown & Sons barreling warehouse, a refined bourbon culture is celebrated nightly with a complimentary 7:33 p.m. toast as a nod to Repeal Day in the year 1933. Hotel Distill is setting the standard for luxury for Louisville hospitality.
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here live tonight in the Bourbon Life Studios, it's my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there in the green room, whatever we're going to call it?
The other room, the family room, the
other room,
the non-studio room. I'm good, Mark. I'm doing great out here. Good to be back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Matt. It is a Monday. It has been a real Monday. I know you've had one as well, man. So it's always fun, though, after a long day of work that we get together and we get to drink and hang out and meet new friends as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun and drink some stuff that neither you nor I have actually had before. So this is going to be quite an experience. I'm excited about this because I've seen so much about this brand on Instagram over the last year or two. So I'm excited to get into this. Of course, I do have to tell everybody before we do that we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate Liquor Barn's support, everything they do for us. We could not do this show without them. And of course, all of our other sponsors as well. We appreciate everything they do for us. Matt, with that said, would you like to tell everybody who we have with us tonight here on the Bourbon Life Podcast?
Absolutely. And Mark, you are right. This is a brand that neither you nor I have tried. And I knew a while ago that we were going to try to get them on the show. And so I purposefully have not had any of their stuff for that reason. And it has been tough with how much I've heard about everything coming out of here, how much everybody is raving about it, where I'm seeing it, friends bringing it, and it's showing up everywhere. And it's almost like I just had to turn a blind eye, saving it for tonight. But wait no longer. Here we are. We have joining us the Master Distiller at Holladay Distillery in Western Missouri, Kyle Merklein. Kyle, welcome on to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Definitely excited to be on here talking to you guys. I watched a few of your episodes, and you introduce people, and they're like, "Yeah, no, this is the second time. This is whatever, multiple time guests," and so here I am, first time. So definitely excited to be here for you to try the bourbon live today, and to kind of just get to tell you a little bit about what we're doing. So, next time I'm in Lexington, I'll have to check you guys out. We was just there in February, so cool spot. It's cool to be out in the world and having people try the bourbon. After here in Weston, Missouri, we've been sitting on the bourbon for 6+ years and
Right.
hoping everyone would like it. And so now we're in the phase where we're out there trying to make sure that everybody does get to try it and sample it. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, we'd love to sit down with you, man, in person when you come over here. Even if we don't do another show, we could get together and have some pours for sure here in the Bourbon Life
Yeah,
Studios.
don't worry. We'll get you towards that 4-time visitor green jacket.
Okay.
We
Okay.
always
man.
promising our guests. We'll get you there.
We'll get you the
Nice.
green jacket like all the. No, I'm just kidding. We're working on something. We got to figure out something for these 3-time, 4-time guests.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we're happy to have you on the show, Kyle. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. And we got a couple things. We're going to be drinking 3 different expressions. We got the first one poured up here tonight. If you'd like to tell everybody what we're going to start out with.
Yeah,
that'd be
so
great.
starting with that Ben Holladay, this and I'll talk about the history, I'm sure later, but Ben Holladay, this is our original mash bill. This is the one that dates back until 1856, and the one that, when we restarted our bourbon production again, back in 2015, 2016 timeframe, we started with. So it's the original for us, 73% corn, 15% rye, 12% malted barley. And this is, made with our kind of historic style of doing things. And again, we'll get into that. But this was truly meant to bring back our history. We made bourbon from 1856 till 1985. And so it was trying to recreate that and bring that back to life. And so kind of really focus on a traditional bourbon. Everything what we're doing is very traditional, and especially with this one. So with that traditional mash bill, it's all kind of, I say for us, our history, but Holladay brothers, when they came up here in the mid 1800s, they were from Kentucky, and so kind of has that similar style and characteristics. So it's kind of in that same vein as what you would expect to taste in a standard bourbon offering. And so the first one, it's a 6-year-old product, and it's bottled in bond, so it's 100 proof with this. But then, one thing when we first started releasing this, and it's one thing that we kind of have had a lot of fun with on site, is when we first started releasing it, it's how can we be different? And we haven't had a bourbon in a bottle for 30 plus years. So what can we do? And it's talking about every aspect of this bourbon and full transparency. And I'll talk about every single detail that we do in our process, but it goes with the label itself. And so you're drinking the one that we just bottled March 2024. On each individual time we bottle, we put on the side chart where those barrels were hand selected each time. And so this one, it's 68% from the 4th floor of our Rickhouse, with the balance of the 32% coming from the 5th floor. And this is from that spring 2017 distillation season. So it's our first time dipping into that 2017 distillation season, but it's all full transparency on the label, or whenever I get around to it, because I suck at writing, on our website, we have a distiller's journal as well that we talk about the full details. So that's what you have, is this March 2024 Ben Holladay 6-year-old bottled in bond that we just bottled here last month.
Very nice. Yeah. Matt, what do you pick up on this one, man?
It's got really great traditional bourbon notes, the nice vanillas and caramels right up front. I think the barrel adds a lot of really nice influence too. There's an oaky factor, but it's certainly not over oak, certainly not tannic, not too aggressive on the oak. The rye really comes through and shines to me. I get a lot of herbal notes, some really nice like rye, grassy, grainy notes on the nose as well. Just really nice, really classic bourbon nose that kind of lets that rye play and shine a little bit through. I really like it.
Yeah, Matt, I agree with that. It's funny because I had these bottles over the weekend, and then I set them on my desk, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and crack them just so they're open. So I cracked them today while I'm working, and I was sniffing this, and I was like, man, I mean, this is like kind of like the quintessential bourbon aromas, right? I mean, just sniffing it out of the bottle, like those caramels, like you said, Matt, the vanillas, and now in the glass, that rye, like you said, those notes come through as well. Very nice. They play well together. Not too spicy, but very nice with that sweetness. A little bit of the corn, I think, comes through as well. That's that kind of sweetness. Um, and like you said, the oak, there's a little bit of the oakiness, but nothing that's overpowering. It all blends well together. So nothing overpowers any other aspect of it. So Kyle, what did we miss in terms of the nose on this one?
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it. I think that's one. I'm not really the tasting note kind
Yeah,
of guy.
I get it.
That's we have others on site. I think I've heard other people say this, but I'm always the, hey, how can we do something differently, or what's the fourth floor versus fifth floor comparison, and going through there. But ultimately, with this one, it is truly, yes, just very traditional bourbon nose. The notes that you would expect to pick up with on that, it's kind of right down the middle of that bourbon profile. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Well, Kyle, let's talk about you some. Let's talk about kind of your background, where you're from, your education, and then how you got into the whiskey industry, and then how that got you to where you are now.
Yeah. So I'm probably a little less traditional route to the bourbon side, although know others that kind of have the similar or somewhat similar background. But I started in Northwest Kansas. Phillipsburg is the name of the town. It's a small town. Most people don't know where it's at, and so it's one of those type of places. 2,000 people, and I actually grew up on a farm outside of town. And my dad, I helped him with all of the aspects of a small family farm. And when I was in high school, it really kind of had older brother and sister, and he kind of sat us all down and told us a similar thing of, hey, this sucks right now, because he was going through droughts in Northwest Kansas, not a ton of rain. And so it's like, this sucks. I know you want to come back here, you want to be part of the farm, but think about other things you could do, and what else you could look at in life. And so ultimately we kind of all took that to heart, but I wanted to still stay in agriculture. So I went and got a bachelor's and master's in biological and agricultural engineering. So I went to Kansas State University, and really wanted to focus in on, that engineering side. I liked math, the science background, but how can you take that grain and add value to it? And so right after I got my bachelor's, I went and made biodiesel. So take soybean, crush that into the oil, and then convert over to biodiesel. And it's fine, but, not nearly as much fun as drinking bourbon. It was good. It was the engineering side of things, and still that conversion, but wanted to focus in on a little bit different aspect. And so went back up my master's, kind of that master's degree, focused in on fermentation side of things. Wanted to be in the beverage alcohol world if I could, and then from there, you prepare for it, you do the engineering, but then the rest is kind of luck, I guess. So I got right after that master's degree, made neutral spirits vodka up in Atchison, Kansas, for a large producer. And then this job came open. So was not expecting a bourbon distillery to open up, or to restart, I guess is the correct term, but restart in Weston, Missouri, just 25 minutes away from where I was. And so I drank bourbon, loved bourbon, and so that was more of what I wanted to do, applied, and then I guess the rest is history. So I joined here in 2016, but really my background was more in that science and the more of the production side, and then the bourbon and the aging that has been as we go, trying to figure all of that out here on site.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. The fact that you come from the farming background, though, and bringing that knowledge and that experience into the world of distillation, because there's not a lot of people. I'm thinking like Colby Frey out at Frey Ranch. They have their farm and things, and we've had them on the show. He and Ashley, and I love the fact that he's actually was a farmer. Yep. He is a farmer, and he farms grain. So I think it's a unique experience. I think that people in your position have. That you can come into this, plus with your engineering experience, their education. Now did I hear correctly or read somewhere that you're actually working on your PhD?
Yeah,
Is that right?
slowly over time. And there's a few things going on around here plus at home, but yeah, trying to get a PhD. So yeah, the short answer, yes, trying to work on the PhD. And I like data and kind of that machine learning side of things. And obviously, if you think about bourbon, there's a lot of data points, right? So even us, we're a small producer. We have
Oh yeah.
20 plus or around 22,000 barrels in our Rickhouse, and each one is aging, and you sample those, and you have all of these data points that you're looking at when you run the GC mass spec. And so how can you actually analyze that and deal with all that data in a much more methodical manner? I think that, to me, fascinates me. But then also I joke, my wife's she's a dentist. And so I always joke that I have to be a doctor as well, just because I'm tired of it being Dr. and Mr. Merklein on the envelopes. So it works, a little bit of both.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great. So Kyle, I'm going to ask you this question. I mean, as master distiller, I mean, people pretty much know what a master distiller does for the most part. But with your distillery, I mean, you guys are more kind of in the craft range, right? I mean, you're not like a huge producer, but you guys are doing a good job out there. But is there a typical day for you? I mean, what would your obligations and duties and responsibilities on a regular basis? What kind of things do you get involved with on a daily basis?
Yeah,
out
so
there?
it's changed a lot, as you can expect, probably since we actually released the bourbon. During the first 6 years as we started up, it's, hey, let's figure this out. Let's make sure we're making the best quality product we can. Let's make sure we're doing it obviously safely, economically, all of those things that you get tasked with when you're starting a new process. There is all of those areas that you have to learn the entire time. And so that was the first, 5-6 years is that. And then as we got closer to our release date at that 6-year mark, it's okay. Now we have to, the whole time I was sampling from the Rickhouse trying to figure that out, but you have to figure out, we don't have a massive team that's also creating each individual bottling and creating each release that we do. And so we have to, it's part of what I do and the team that I work with of, hey, how do we take these and put them into the bottlings that we do and do it in a way that makes sense. And so that was, the next year or two, combined with learning how we do our, we don't call it single barrel program, but our 1 barrel program here on site. We sell 1 barrel bourbon.
Okay.
But how do we identify those? What does that process look like? So every step of the process has just been learning as we go. When you start up and kind of create a bourbon brand and release it, there's just so much learning that goes with it. And so it's been every step of the process, learning what we're doing. And so that's really what the focus has been. And then obviously, the marketing and sales aspect comes with it as well. So it's, you want to hear
The podcast
and going out into the world and telling the story and talking with distributors and making sure they understand what's going on. And so it's just been, that part has been more obviously the last year or so, as we have both of our products out, what can we do to make sure that people want to buy it and keep buying it? And that's obviously the if you can make it, but if people don't buy it, it doesn't matter. So stepping in that realm as well. So it's been typical day. There is not one. And I think maybe in a larger place, there might be a more typical day. I'm not sure. I feel like in smaller facilities, you do everything. You figure out everything because you want to make sure that you're represented well, and it's not, you don't have unlimited resources, and it's, you got to make sure that everything is respected the way that we want it to be. So that's, it's been a lot of figuring things out as we go, is what my job has been the last few years.
Yeah. So when they hired, I think you said you came on around 2016. Is that right?
2016. Yep.
Or 15?
Yeah. So we started back up in
So-
2015, kind of renovating our still house. And then
Okay.
once it got operational, I was brought on to run it full time then.
Okay. So they hired you right in as master distiller. Like you're in there.
Yeah, essentially. Yep.
Wow. That's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, it
So
was, and it's still one of those terms. I don't know. I think a lot of people, everyone would love to have that title, but I still don't think that that's me yet. I still have a hard time
I get
introducing
you.
myself as that, because you think of an iconic like a Jimmy Russell who's been around forever, and you hear the stories of how he would never let Eddie be called Master Distiller until he'd been there for like 30 plus years. Like, you hear all of that. It's like,
Right.
yeah, no,
Mhm.
I've
Right.
just been making bourbon for 7 years, so I still got a bit to learn. But yeah, so it's been fun to be able to be here from the beginning with the bourbon process for sure, and to help guide that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool, man. Very cool. Matt, let's jump back over to the whiskey. Speaking of whiskey, what do you get in terms of the palate as you take another sip? What do you get in terms of the palate and the finish on this Ben Holladay 6-year-old bottled in bond?
Palate right up front has a nice play of sweet and spicy to me. I think that rye, some of the heat really comes right on the tip of the tongue. Then I get a good, like, really nice sweet grits or like corn mash, polenta kind of flavors, just like a really, really nice sweetness and like good earthy grain, corn forward notes. Then more of that sweetness comes through. There's like honey, some sort of like an herbal honey tea flavors in there as well. Good barrel influence to round out with some oak, vanilla, almost a little bit of just like a touch of some cherry or some sort of a red fruit on there. Nice spicy, peppery finish. Just kind of like we were saying on the nose, like kind of
Yeah.
quintessential bourbon type nose. I think it drinks very quintessential kind of bottled in bond aged bourbon.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. It just hits kind of all those right notes, right? It's got that sweetness to it, like we talked about caramel vanilla on the nose, translates, carries over into that palate finish.
Hmm.
The spice really does kick in, especially on that finish.
Yeah.
I think on the palate, you get that combination, like you said, of sweetness and spiciness, which is really nice because they kind of play off of each other. It's like it's sweet, and then like, oh no, wait, it's spicy, and then it's like, wait, no, it's sweet, and it just kind of goes back and forth between that. But then it has that nice long finish on it as well, which has that spice, that rye spice really starts
Hmm.
to come through on that as well. I get like a hint of cinnamon on that finish, just like a long finish of cinnamon as well. Matt, the cherry, like you said, I do get that little bit of hint of cherry on that as well. But yeah, man, just overall, just really nice, and it's really cool that the nose, it carries over into that palate and finish. So it's a very consistent uh, pour, I think, all the way through. Would you agree with that, Matt?
Yeah, I would. Absolutely.
Yeah. Kyle, what
Yeah,
about you? I
yeah,
know I
no,
don't want to put you on the
no,
spot,
that all
but
makes sense and kind of fits with, especially. So, a couple points that I would bring up. This is, as I mentioned, floors 4 and 5, and at that 6 year mark, and we have to figure out what our identity is as we get older, stock available. But at that 6 year mark, that floor 4 and 5, that Ben Holladay mash bill, that really does it carries through that rye spice and characteristic at those two floors, and
yep.
this it makes 100% sense that these two coming from just that's kind of what you notice a bit more. I think sweetness, you say that we typically do get that note or that comment that relatively sweet overall perception, and this one has that spice or the higher floors balancing it out. But that's one thing that has always been brought up, and whether it's sweetness or a different thing, people don't often think it drinks the proof that it does, and I think this one is closer to drinking the proof that it is than others. But yeah, definitely makes sense from that standpoint. And I'll also point out, and I think we get into the weeds a bit about the whiskey discussion later, but it also makes sense. You highlight the rye, so we're 15% rye. It's not a high rye bourbon by kind of today's
Right,
standards,
right.
but we do respect those secondary grains in the process, and so we've always cooked those separately. We're trying to maximize the amount of flavor we can get from those. So even if it is only the 15% rye or 15% wheat, we have two cooker systems. We're extracting as much as we possibly can from that, and so definitely our mash bills across the board, kind of a spoiler, but 15% of that small grain. And so we always want to highlight
Mhm.
those as much as we possibly can. And so it definitely makes sense, and also good to hear that you kind of get those traits from this Ben Holladay uh, mash bill, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny because you're talking about the proof point and drinking. For me, it's 100 proofer, but I think that rye spice on that finish kind of tricks my palate into thinking that it's a higher
Yep.
proof than 100 proof. It's almost got, Matt, we've talked about this before, like a capsaicin, you get that like almost like a hot pepper
Mhm.
kind of feeling. And on my palate, it's like this lingering heat. So it's like there's a cinnamon taste to it, but then there's a lingering heat on my palate. It stays. And it kind of reminds me of the effect of like after you eat a pepper, the flavor dissipates, but that kind of burn, lingers, and that tricks my palate into thinking that it's a much
Mhm.
higher proof than 100 proof. So, yeah, very cool, very nice, Matt. Final thoughts on this one?
That's absolutely lovely. Like it.
I agree. I had to finish that one.
I just saw that.
For sure.
Lush.
May have to have a little bit more of that one, during the break or something, Matt. So, speaking of the break, we are at the end of round one. See, Kyle, I
Yeah.
told you, man, before we started the show that these rounds, like they fly. Once we
They
start
do.
going, it's
Mhm.
like crazy how quickly we get through it. And for a guy with a undergraduate and a master's and working on a PhD in science stuff, man, you're doing a great job, dude.
Yeah, gotta try to have a few bourbons to warm up beforehand.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, yeah. I feel you on that one for sure. So, guys, I tell you what, let's take a quick break. Let's get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Kyle Merklein with Holladay Distillery in just a minute.
Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
Bluegrass Distillers is a craft distillery with a passion for producing exceptional bourbon. They're committed to the art of distillation, using locally sourced grains to create a distinct and flavorful bourbon that captures the essence of Kentucky's rich whiskey heritage. Bluegrass Distillers takes pride in their small batch, hands-on approach, ensuring quality and attention to detail in every bottle they make, like their limited release 9-year-old Elkwood Reserve Bourbon, which is currently available for purchase at their brand new Visitor Center in Midway, Kentucky, their distillery in Lexington, and select stores throughout Kentucky. And with their new distillery slated to begin operation in spring of 2024, you'll be able to pick up even more exceptional spirits from them, like their wheated bourbon and their blue corn bourbon in the spring and fall. For more details and to plan your visit, check out their website at bluegrassdistillers.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight live in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement, it is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there in the room of whatever?
Out in your basement. I am doing great, Mark. How are you? Mission control.
Great.
Everything all right? Ground control?
Man,
Major
I'm
Tom?
doing great. I'm having a great time, Matt. We talked about it earlier. It was a crappy day, but here we are. We're in round 2 and we're already having fun. It's like all the things that happened today have just kind of fallen to the wayside and don't even care anymore, right? We're just having a good conversation, having fun, making new friends, and drinking some great bourbon, man. What more could you ask for on a Monday night, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Monday evening, whenever it is you're getting your
Whenever.
Bourbon Life podcast.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Whenever it is you're listening, we appreciate you guys tuning in. So I should probably tell everybody, of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support. We could not do the show without them, and all of our other sponsors. We appreciate them as well. Matt, with that said, do you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely. Back joining us for the second round of the Bourbon Life podcast, Kyle Merklein is the Master Distiller at Holladay Distillery in Weston, Missouri. Kyle, welcome on back for the second round of the Bourbon Life podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. You say Monday and having a rough day. I kind of forget that most people don't get to start drinking at 10 a.m. and have a barrel pick and just keep it going. And it's not a normal thing. So I guess, welcome to Monday. But
Yeah.
Hey, good for you for
Kyle,
creating the life you want, right?
that's exactly
Cheers
right,
to
man.
ya.
That's
yeah,
That's exactly right. You guys. Well, Matt's doing pretty good on his end now too. He's working on that kind of aspect as well. Me, on the other hand, I'm still practicing law and still got to answer to the man. So unfortunately, one of these
Yeah.
days, Kyle, maybe
Yep.
my days will be starting to drink bourbon at 10 o'clock doing barrel picks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can only hope. Well, we're excited to have you on the show, Kyle, man. We're happy you're here. Like I said before, I'm on Instagram and see your stuff, not your stuff, but people talking about you guys everywhere. And Matt and I mentioned that earlier. We'd not had anything from you guys yet. So we're really excited to have you on the show and get to share some of the things. We've got something else here for round two. If you want to tell everybody what we're going to be drinking this round, that'd be great.
This is our Holiday Soft Red Wheat, bottled in bond as well. This one is the one that it's not part of our history. It is the one that we just released last March, and it's really been one that ultimately, everything historically for us, the Ben Holiday bottled in bond, that was about bringing back the past. Then really after that first year, our president said that he liked wheated bourbons. There was a couple brands he always wanted to drink, and so said, "Hey, I need something to drink whenever it comes of age," and I wanted to keep my job, so we made that. And so that's where we are. So ultimately, it was a lot of that foresight on his part. He liked it, but he also knew that the bourbon consumer, that was kind of the trending thing at that point. And so fast forward, I guess 6 years, was March of last year, 2023, and we released our first batch of this. And it's, again, not part of our history, but it is using that historic process, historic style of making it for us. Still the same mash bill, so 73% corn, 15% soft red winter wheat, 12% malted barley on that, going into the char 3 barrels, like what we're using for our Ben Holiday. And this is aged again on site. Now, the one that we're drinking tonight, that's our latest bottling from March of 2024. So kind of a year after we've done it. We've had a handful of those. And when we first started filling up that Rickhouse, we had some barrels on floors, 1, 2, 5, and 6. But the majority, we kind of focused in on that heart of the Rickhouse. And so floors 3 and 4 had a lot of them. And then we kind of, that was 6 years ago. Then we kind of decided we're not going to rotate barrels. We're not going to ultimately try to blend for that consistency necessarily, rather than embracing the location of that Rickhouse and how they age differently. And so as we come to each of these bottlings, we have different barrels available. And so the first ones, they were spread out. We had 5 floors available. August of last year, we had our first ever, across both of our mash bills, first ever single floor bottling. So it was 100% from floor 4. Fast forward to this year, and we had barrels that were a bunch of barrels that were of age on floor 3, and we had a bunch of barrel picks that people were selecting from floor 3. And so we thought, okay, let's lean into that. We've had a single floor from floor 4. Let's do a single floor from floor 3. And so that's what this one is. 100% floor 3 bottling on this, really embracing that floor of what people were selecting for those barrel picks. And letting kind of, as you go through the process, letting the bourbon nerds into that world of, hey, how does a 6-year-old product differ floor to floor, and a true comparison rather than the blend across the floors. The Ben Holiday we tried tonight had 2 different floors in it, versus this one has that just single floor. And so really embracing that. So that's what we got tonight is the March 2024 bottling.
Yep, very cool. And again, nobody can see it, unfortunately, but yes, I'm pointing at the label where it does say 100% of the barrels came from floor 3 in Rickhouse C. So yeah, very, very cool. I mean, I love the transparency. I love the fact you guys put that stuff right on the label, man, so people know what they're doing. But like you said, I think there's so many bourbon nerds out there that geek out about specific Rickhouses and specific floors and specific Rickhouses. So yeah, I mean, why not capitalize on that and share that information with people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's people
And
want to
this
know what
again-
they're drinking,
go
what
ahead.
they're eating, what they're any of that. It's transparency. Why would we even consider hiding it? Let's just throw it out there on the label and let people see what they think of each bottling. So
Yep. And this one again, 6 years old, bottled in bond. Very cool. Oh, I was going to ask you on the first round. I forgot to do that because all these are Missouri straight bourbon whiskeys, and that is actually a specific designation. It's not just a name you guys slapped on the label and said, "Hey, we're in Missouri. It's Missouri straight bourbon," but there is actually a classification.
Correct. Yeah, there is. Obviously, we are in Missouri, and that is a big part of it, and we're making it here. But to be called Missouri bourbon, Missouri legislature passed the law in 2019, I believe, and it has a handful of components, but ultimately it has to be made here in the state of Missouri. It distilled, fermented, all of those fun things. Has to be aged here as well. That checks the box. We're here. We're on site. That's not a problem for us. Has to be made with Missouri grown corn. And so we have farmers that we work with. If you think about Missouri, it's just similar to Kentucky or really any of the central Midwest. There's plenty of corn. There's plenty of farmers around here. And so we work with a local farmer that supplies all the corn for our operation. And then on the backside, he takes the stillage and feeds his cattle. So we have that kind of beginning and end farm location. And then the final piece of Missouri bourbon, it has to be made in or aged in barrels that were made in the state of Missouri with Missouri oak. And so that is a big component that not a lot of states can have claim to. We work with Independent Stave Company down in Lebanon, Missouri, and they make a lot of barrels down there, and they use a lot of oak from the kind of Ozark region of Missouri. So it fits for us and what we're doing for sure. And so that's really telling the story that Missouri has all of the components that you need to make bourbon. And historically we did make bourbon, prior to, I guess, Prohibition, there was people making bourbon here, and it's only kind of, it fell off when people quit drinking it, but ultimately we have every component that you need in Missouri. And so we're really proud of that overall. So yes, Missouri straight bourbon whiskey, that appears on our label. And there are certain those things that you have to follow in order to label it that.
Very cool. Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the nose on this soft red wheat bottled in bond 6-year-old?
I absolutely love this nose. I am really, really impressed. It's very delicate, but at the same time, I think really makes itself known in a lot of great places. It's got a good bready note, kind of as one might expect sometimes when you think of a wheated bourbon, like sort of those wheat toast or wheat bread notes come across right up front. But then to me, it takes a different turn, and it's almost like orange blossom. Like I'm getting a fair amount of like citrus, orange blossom, kind of like some floral notes with it as well. Long, creamy vanillas in there, almost like vanilla soft serve ice cream type note. Just really nice. It's just like really lovely, delicate, but there's a lot going on as well. It's a nose that I could just like sit around and really just go at for a while. It's really, really nice.
Yeah. And Matt, I agree that creaminess that you talked about, that fullness, creaminess, the soft serve, I think that's a great descriptor. The vanilla, but also just a kind of a creaminess. It's almost like a melt, like you're smelling a cup of melted vanilla ice cream, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You get that vanilla, but that creamy, like almost fatty kind of smell to it, which is kind of unique. To me, it comes across a little bit fruity, Matt. You talked about orange blossom, but to me, I'm almost getting more like almost like a strawberry-ish almost like a jam type of flavor to it. That's coming through on this with the wheat. But yeah, I mean, it's a delicious nose, like you said. And one, I think it changes a little bit. There's a lot of aspects and unique characteristics to it. But very, very nice. So Kyle, anything else that you want to?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of hits the highlights. It's amazing to me, and just kind of a reminder, everything we do, it's just the one grain is different. In the whole process, a lot of other places that have different mash bills, they completely change it up and they modify their wheated mash bill to be something different. And for us, we could have done that. And when we were first releasing it, it's actually kind of comical. one of our sales guys that kind of controls all the bourbon and where it's going and what we're doing with that. He was talking to me and getting the training on the soft red wheat, and we'd gone through all the training for the Ben Holladay and our history, and we'd gone, it was very thorough, very in depth. And then with the soft red, we were getting ready to launch that, and it's like, well, what's different? So let's sit down, let's schedule, an hour meeting. So we get there, and it's like, well, okay, here's what's different. We use soft red wheat. The other one, it was European rye. And it's like, okay, got it. What else? Like, that's basically it. It's really a study in one grain. How does one grain impact the mash bill or the taste of this overall?
Yeah.
And it's just phenomenal that you can get that extreme, with the Ben Holladay. You were talking about that rye spice really coming through on the nose right away. It was hitting you. And this is that different characteristic overall. And it's one of those where the wheat kind of stands, you notice it, but it stands down a bit more and lets that barrel shine through. And it's just a completely different experience. So it's a lot of fun and I'm, in retrospect, I guess when you start a brand, or when you do everything with this, you question every decision. And I'm like, should we have made it a lot more different? Should we have really focused in on, lower barrel entry proof, or should we have mixed up our mash bill more? Or should we have done? But in retrospect, I don't think we would have changed a thing, because you get that just true comparison across the board of how does that one grain impact it. And so, ultimately worked out for us, I think, dramatically different nose and taste experience with this.
Yep, completely, 100%. So, Kyle, let's kind of talk about the brand. You've referred to the history a little bit, the Ben Holladay especially. Let's talk about that. Can you talk about the history of the brand itself, and then how you guys kind of rekindled back in 2015?
Yeah, so there's a lot of history on our property, and the cool thing is it is actually our property that has this history, and it's not anything that we've had to manufacture in any way, shape, or form. So we were founded in 1856 by Ben Holladay and his brother David. They came out of Kentucky, as I mentioned, and they had come up to kind of the Kansas City area, the Weston area, and had a handful of different businesses. But then in kind of 1849, bought this property and started renovating it to become a distillery. So 1856, we were founded, and we started making bourbon with that original mash bill. Would not have been made, necessarily the same way. Just that historic mash bill was kind of documented back in Ben Holladay's ledgers. He had a interesting history, and you can read about it on our website. But Ben Holladay ended up focusing in on other entrepreneurial ventures and became the largest private employer in the United States in the 1800s. He owned a stagecoach line running west that bought the Pony Express, took all those contracts, and really built out this line, and had a bunch of different ventures that he focused in on, while his brother David ran the distillery and made bourbon. And so he has a fascinating history that not a lot of people know about. Again, that stagecoach line, that's why that stagecoach appears on our bottle. He ended up selling that off in the 1800s to an institution known as Wells Fargo. And so you may recognize something along that line today. And so that was our history dates back to this fascinating character. But during this time, we continued to make bourbon on site. So from 1856, we made it up until 1985. And with that short prohibition break where we did kind of medical holidays and periodic, and we had bourbon aging. But we made it up until 1985. And our company during that time changed hands a few times, and different owners bought it and sold it. And it just kind of ventured throughout. But 1985, the owners at the time decided to shut down our production on site. And so that was, during that time when people weren't drinking bourbon as much. They wanted to drink vodka, shaken, not stirred, and have all these martinis and be like Bond and all of those things. And so our owners at the time decided it was too expensive, shut down our property. And we continued to operate, but we just focused in and pivoted at that time on all of those things that the consumers wanted. And so we had built out a brand of vodka. We built out a brand of tequila. We built out all of kind of the business of the alcohol, the spirits world, and really focused in on that during that time. Now, in 1993, a different group bought us, and they remembered the past, but it wasn't still bourbon wasn't kind of the what it is today.
Yeah.
And so they continued on that path, but not forgetting about it. And then 2013, 2014 timeframe is when that group and our current management, the president Mick Harris that I talked about earlier, really wanted to go and actually revive that, knowing that bourbon was kind of in that Renaissance period again, a bit more than it was. And so that was where we kind of, as a company, focused in on premiumization, and introduced other products. We have Five Farms Irish Cream, where it's an Irish cream that's sourced exclusively from Five Family Farms in County Cork. And so really focusing on these stories that are real, and these brands that have a backbone to them. And bourbon was kind of that main one for us. It's our property, it's our history, and it has a real history to it. And so that was what we did. 2015 timeframe, a lot of renovations going on in our still house, which is this kind of old limestone structure dating back to 1839. And so we brought that back. We uncovered our limestone springs on site that were just kind of covered and had a maintenance shop over them. We had our rickhouses that were storing bottling equipment, clean those out and started, repairing roofs, the roof on those, and fixing all of the ricks throughout that rickhouse. And so that was that time period, and getting things brought back to life. And 2016 was really when we started back up again full time in that production, the day-to-day operations. That's when I joined, was to kind of keep this running. And so, yeah, very fascinating history that is actually real, rooted in that historic feel. And when you walk on site, we're on 180 acres, and it's surrounded by a state
Wow.
park on three sides, and so it's one of those places you walk into, and it. Before I interviewed, frankly, I've been down to Kentucky, right? You see all these places, and you see what they're all doing, and I was a bit skeptical. I had a good job. I didn't need to come over here necessarily, and my dad told me, it was like, "Hey, it sounds like a startup. I don't know. That seems risky. You should stay around at the other place." But you walk in here, and it just feels you get this sense of being in Kentucky, and you get this feeling that it's just something different. And so that's really, as I walked in, and our experience of what we have going on. It's just that very traditional kind of facility in general, but also that history that has a real history that dates back to the same time period as a lot of the places that are down in your region. So
Yeah. Which, I mean, to me, that's really cool, because you do have brands that are like, oh, well, my great great granddaddy did this, and I'm going to, which
yeah.
is fine. I mean, I'm all for it. If you want to rekindle a brand that was tied to your family, I have nothing
Mhm.
against that. But, you're resurrecting a story, and it's kind of hard sometimes to do that. But I mean, you guys have the connection, not just to the story, but to the physical location. I mean, you guys are there on site, and that makes a huge difference, I think, at least in my mind, with what you guys are doing, which is very cool, man. So, Matt, let's jump back to the whiskey, because we're almost at the end of round two. Believe it or not. See, I told you, Kyle, these rounds where I
Actually,
start,
yeah.
man, it's just like, what? Over. Let's jump back to the whiskey, Matt. I saw you sucking down the last of your pour
You
there.
did.
You got enough left to tell me what the palate and the finish is for you?
Guilty as charged. It's got a nice like bread crust flavor, toasted bread crust, just that beautiful, like, fresh baked bread flavor coming to on the palate. I get the orange peel comes across to me almost like a little bit of orange sherbet, or like some sort of a sweet orange dessert on there. Then it's got some baking spice, but not like traditional kinds. I'm getting like the slightest touch of anise or anise, caraway. There's like some molasses, kind of like darker sugars in there, brown sugar as well. I think the cinnamon is definitely on the finishes with like a really nice, long, warming cinnamon sugar heat that really comes down the pipeline that way. It's just beautiful drinking product. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, I think, the thing when you say, a wheated bourbon, you think, oh, it's going to be like this very soft and smooth finish and it's going to be whatever. And this one, again, like the Ben Holiday, to me, this one has a palate, a finish on it that's got a little bit of spice to it, which, it doesn't come from the oak. I'm assuming it comes from it doesn't come from the wheat, it comes from the oak. But I get, Matt, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but almost like a hint of like cacao, or almost like a dark chocolate on the finish, which is kind of weird. Every time it's like there's a hint. Like after I take a drink and after like 10 or 15 seconds, I take a breath in and I get this aroma of almost like a hint of chocolate on that, which is really, really interesting. I like it. But yeah, I mean, the sweetness, again, the nose, the palate, the finish, everything translates well together. I still kind of get, Matt, you talk about orange. To me, I'm still getting almost like that jam kind of raspberry, strawberry-ish kind of flavor as well that comes through for me in terms of the sweetness on it. But yeah, there's a spiciness to it as well. Again, drinks a little warmer than 100 proof to me, like the first one does. So Kyle, anything that you want to add on that one, or that we missed?
I think that kind of nails it. The notes of the bread. I think that third floor, I've really noticed that as a characteristic for that floor specifically. But ultimately, in general, I think because our mash bills are so similar and our process is so similar overall across the two, you get a lot of the similarities between this and a traditional bourbon that you don't normally get in some other wheated products. And so, yeah, I think that kind of makes sense. Both everything that you called out, it's not going to stand down completely on its own. It's not a low proof wheated bourbon. It's 100 proof, and we're making it in our traditional way. And so there is the characteristic that comes with that as well, but it is still definitely has that wheated characteristic.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So Matt, final thoughts on this one?
I like this one a lot. This is really lovely.
Yeah, very nice. I agree with you on that one. So guys, tell you what, we're at the end of round two here. Let's take a quick break. We'll get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Kyle Merklein with Holladay Distillery in just a minute.
From our good friends at the Stave comes Lexington's newest hot spot to meet up with friends, have fun, and eat some great food. District 7 Social is a social and beer hall, but it's a lot more than that. Located in Lexington's Distillery District, it's the home of Lexington's first duck pin bowling lanes, and it also features a self-serve beer wall. That's right, self-serve. And if you want more, they've got it. You can try one of their delicious cocktails from the bar, or order some great German fusion food from their on-site eatery, Germanish. So what are you waiting for? Be seen, be social. District 7 Social.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and sadly final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight, live in the Bourbon Life Studios, it is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there for round three?
I'm ready for round three. That's how I'm doing.
Yeah, bring it.
That's right. The waiting has been the hardest part on this one. We're finally getting to take our foray into these products here.
There you go. It's funny. We were talking about this before we started with Kyle. I mentioned our guest. We're not supposed to do that yet. But anyway, with our guest, I was talking about how quickly the episode or the segments go, man. And this has like blown through tonight. This is kind of crazy how quickly we've gone through 2 rounds so far. So hopefully this round, we can slow it down a little bit. We'll take 50, 60 minutes, whatever he needs to, tell everything he needs to tell, so he doesn't have to go home quite yet. He can stay here and drink with us a little bit longer. So, all right. So we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support, and we appreciate the support of all of our sponsors. Matt, with that said, you want to tell everybody who we have with us? I've already kind of let the cat out of the bag, of course. And if they've been listening the first 2 rounds, they already know. But Matt, tell everybody who we have.
That's right. We are happy this morning, this afternoon, this evening to be joined by the Master Distiller at Holladay Distillery in Weston, Missouri, Kyle Merklein. Kyle, welcome on back for our final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been fun. It's been, relatively painless. It's get to drink a couple bourbons and just talk about it. It's good. So, thank you.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate it.
You said your wife's a dentist. I'm sure every day people go visit her and like they leave in pain. See, you come see us, man, and
Exactly.
we're just gonna have a good time and drink bourbon.
You ease the
and
pain.
There's no
Yeah,
pain.
she
Yeah,
she
ease the pain.
used to think that she was the cool one in the relationship. I was the engineer, right? Like I was the introvert, and she thought that she was this outgoing person. And now she's the dentist that no one wants to go see, and I'm the one that makes bourbon that everybody.
Everybody loves.
It worked out, so
Yeah,
it's kind of fun. So
that's right. How the tables have
exactly.
turned, my dear.
Mhm.
Oh, well, Kyle, man, thanks for joining us tonight. I'm really excited about this, man. I've been looking forward to doing the show and happy we got you on here. Like I've said before, I've seen everything on social media, but you guys just blowing up. So really excited to have you on the show. Before we jump into what we're drinking, one thing I wanted to say, we haven't mentioned this before, but you guys, this is all your own distillate. You guys were not putting out anything sourced,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, we when we started back up with the bourbon production, it was the like most conversations, you don't know what exactly you want to do. It's a big financial investment, but we had talked about sourcing, or we had talked about putting a doubler in on site, or just aging on site, or doing various things. And then ultimately decided, hey, we want to do this right. We want to do this the way that we used to do it, and bring back that history. And so from that point on, it was always the thought, let's do this with just our product. And then it was truly a matter of, when do we release this at that point? We had the thought, maybe 3-4 years old, whatever, get something out the door, get some revenue coming in. But really, I pulled samples and gave them to the board and the shareholders, that kind of, to their credit, it was more of the decision. Again, it's not my money. So I just could advise. I could say, hey, this is going to taste better at 6 years, but here you go. This is what we have right now. This is kind of the best that I think that we have. But I think we should wait. And to their credit, we had several people on our board who had tried it back in the past, in the 80s, knew what we could do and what we were capable of. And they said, why would we try to rush this? Our sweet spot on site was always 6 to 10 years. And so let's do it that way. Let's go back to that. And so really it kind of cemented the fact that we were going to wait with our product for that 6-year time period. And so that was where we were at. And that was kind of ultimately why we decided to do the bottled and bond. Tell that story that this is our product. It was made by us, aged here, bottled by us. And so that was a big factor in why we decided to come out of the gates with that bottled and bond release of both of our mash bills. So yeah, definitely I think a lot of pride on site that we were able to do that. There's never anything wrong with sourcing, because most people are not in that option where they can do what we did. And so very grateful that we could do that, but definitely proud of that on site, that we could wait 6 years with our own product before releasing anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge decision and a huge investment of money and time, no doubt. So let's talk about what we have poured up on this third and final round here. Kyle, if you want to let everybody know.
Yeah,
what
so
we got.
Holladay Soft Red Wheat, Rickhouse proof version. So we are a distillery in Missouri. We're not normal, so we can't call things the normal convention. So rather than being full proof, we are Rickhouse proof. So this is our Rickhouse proof version, the full proof version of the bottlings that we do. This one comes from October 2023. So it's coming in at 120.1 proof. And kind of as I mentioned, this came from the 5 different floors of the Rickhouse. And that one, the primary floor was a fourth floor offering, but again, continued on with the side chart of where those came from.
Okay.
Everything that we do, it's full transparency. The youngest product we're ever going to release is 6 years old. The lowest proof product we're going to release is 100 proof. And so it's just that kind of meant for that bourbon nerd consumer that, that wants to know all of those details. But also, it's we are biased and think that it's a good tasting product. So it's something for everyone. But yeah, so this one, that Rickhouse proof, 120.1 proof, full flavor. We are not on any of our products doing chill filtration. And so this is continuing on in line with that. Just kind of minimal filtration, remove the char, really let the bourbon stand for what it is directly from the barrel. And so this is kind of what I'm tasting as I'm creating each individual bottling. Yeah, not everyone always loves that foolproof version of it, but for those that do, this is kind of our venture, that red label. It's for both of our mash bills. That red label stands for our Rickhouse proof offering. So,
Yep. Very nice. Matt, what do you pick up on the nose on this one?
On this, the fruit notes are definitely amplified for me. There's a lot of black cherry, a lot of dark, like red tree fruit or orchard fruit, almost like some plum or blackberry, just beautiful, beautiful dark, like red wine notes on it as well. The wheat is there, that present softness makes itself known. Good barrel influence, definitely some char, vanillas coming from that barrel. Just a really, really lovely nose. Certainly does not nose 120.1 proof. I think there's hardly any faint touch of alcohol on it whatsoever that would make me think it's that high.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. That's the one thing that stood out to me because I'm thinking 120 proof because I love high proofs, right? And usually you got to be careful going in. And this one,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, man, you can get right in there. It's like it reminds me of the bottled and bond what we had in round 2. There's similarities between it, but it's almost like it's on steroids. It's like those flavors are just intensified. So similar to that, some differences, but just it's like, I don't know. It's just like every flavor it has intensified from the bottled and bond, the 100 proof holiday that we just had. So, Kyle, anything else you want to add
nope,
on that?
that's kind of like you said, everything is amplified without the added necessarily ethanol characteristics. I think a lot of people, and this is especially, I said earlier, people think it drinks a little bit lower, but when we have our barrel picks on site, our 1 barrel program, they're at this proof point or higher, and everyone kind of gets scared of that, but really it doesn't come off as that necessarily. It's amplification of the flavor is kind of really what's going on with this.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, just very nice. So let's talk about Weston, Missouri.
Yep.
I've never visited Weston. I lived in Springfield,
Okay.
Missouri
Yeah.
for about 2 years. I spent a lot of time at Bennett Springs outside of
Yep.
Independence.
Yeah.
Learned how to fly fish up there for trout. But I don't know anything about Weston, Missouri. So talk about what it's like producing bourbon in Weston, Missouri.
So Weston is it's a small town just north of Kansas City, about 15 minutes away from the Kansas City airport, actually. And so we're not far away, but far enough away that we can have the property and the field that we're wanting to do. And Weston, kind of similar to our location, Weston has a unique history itself, and it was actually meant to be kind of that Kansas City area. It was the furthest town west, and it was right along the river. And then at a time, it was larger than Kansas City, and then the river shifted. And then Kansas City became what Kansas City is today, and Weston kind of basically was frozen in time. And so kind of has one of those idyllic main streets where you just drive down and there's shops and there's all these old houses, and it's a cool spot for sure. And it's a great location to visit. It's one of those places that is not known for bourbon, as you mentioned. We are the history of bourbon.
Sorry.
And so it's one of those things, you know, if you revive a brand or you start a brand in Kentucky, you have access to all these people that have history of, yeah, I can just call my friend who worked at XYZ distillery.
Yeah.
And you
Mhm.
have everyone with that history of making bourbon. And that's not the case here. We're, you know, in Western Missouri. And so we're not near any of the traditional distilleries. And so it's a lot of figuring it out as you go. There's obviously craft producers in Missouri and Kansas, and we've talked with them and we're friends with them, but it's not not nearly the same scale as what you have going on in Kentucky. And so when we came back to restart our brand, it was relying a lot on our history and our past and our people. And so I mentioned earlier the board members who used to be around here back in the day, drink our bourbon back in the day. They knew about the process, or we actually had several employees who used to make it here back in the '80s. Their first job was running the still, um, and
Oh, wow. Okay.
then they stayed employed here. We're continuing to operate, right? And so we had a lot of the same employees, but they focused in on other things. And so, you know, one of our guys, Dennis Cohurst, he focused in on stainless steel welding, and he welded up a lot of pipes that ran into bottling lines, and that was what he did for the 30 years. And then we started this back up, and he welded the pipes that started our distillery back up, and he could
Nice.
help in that process and tell us, hey, you know, they used to use this or they did that, or and so you had kind of still, thankfully, we're early enough on, I guess, in the revival process where we had the employees that knew the history. And so yeah, it's interesting. Missouri bourbon is not a huge thing yet, and we're working on that. But yeah, between the knowledge base, we had to dig into our history a lot. But then the biggest issue is always when you go down anywhere in the U.S. Yeah, we're making bourbon in Weston, Missouri. You get questions, you get doubt, there's
Sure.
skepticism, and so that's, I think, at this point the biggest thing that we're facing. We figured out how to make it. Now it's making the name for what we're doing is where we're at, and so
Sure.
that's the biggest challenge at this point.
So, Kyle, you're talking about the kind of like resurrecting really the distillery, bringing it back. Are you guys still using like original equipment that they had there? Did you guys like upgrade everything, or how
Yeah,
did
we
that work?
we wanted to, and by we again, Mick Harris, he's a big proponent of the past, and so we wanted to, but we had you know, Vendome come in and look at our still that we had on site, and it was one that we were using in the '80s, but we had bought it in 1972 from a place called Star Hill Farm, and so it had been around Maker's Mark for a few years before that, and so uh, it
Yeah,
had
sure.
that still had been operational for, you know, 40 plus years. And so when they came out, it was no, we cannot in good faith actually restore this back to its you know, life. And
Oh,
so we ended up going with a column still from Vendome with the doubler. That
okay.
was what was in place. So we had a column still doubler, uh, and really brought new equipment into the fold from there. So we still use a two cooker system. Kind of mentioned that we cook our corn in one cooker, the large grain.
Yeah.
Small grain, the wheat or the rye, we'll try to extract the full amount of flavor from that and cook it separately prior to combining it into our large cooker. And then from there, open top fermenters with the column still 118 or sorry, 120 off the still, 130 off the doubler, 118 barrel entry proof. So we brought back the
Okay.
past and the history with new equipment from Vendome. With the caveat, it's all in the old building. It's all with our old. We have the limestone spring on site, 45,000 gallons of
Yeah.
water
Nice.
that we have capacity on that, as well as those Rickhouses that were from the 40s and 50s. So
You guys are using your limestone, the spring water for your distillation and
yep.
stuff?
So when we cook, we're using that
Wow.
limestone spring water. So it's all kind of coming from that hand dug limestone cistern that was on site and kind of recovered and renovated as part of that 2015 renovation. So,
I mean, because it's kind of crazy because everybody in Kentucky talks about, oh, it's limestone water. It's like, yeah, there's about 75-80% of the distilleries that are using city water.
Yeah. Oh, that's it
So-
would definitely be easier at times, but no, we have that limestone spring and we have more than enough supply of it, especially with what we're producing. And so that has always been our history. That has always been what we've used, and the run tests on that and compare it to Kentucky, and it's very similar overall. And so definitely is what we use to begin the process.
Very, very cool to know that. So let's talk about your blending process. And this Rickhouse proof, this is not a single barrel. This is a blend of other barrels, correct? So all the things we tasted tonight, these are blended barrels. What kind of, do you have a standard size in terms of barrels that you use when you're blending, or do you just kind of go from batch to batch?
Each one will vary ever so slightly, and that's where I always call out our distiller's journal on our website, assuming I get it updated. I always joke I was from Western Kansas and I engineer. I'm not good. Traditionally, I'm working on this, but I'm not good at talking to people and I'm not good at writing because the engineers, we can't write. So I'm improving rapidly at the talking to people part, but the writing, that's still a struggle for me. So I eventually get around to it. But on our distiller's journal, we talk about that. I put in how many barrels were used for that. We talk about angel share that we had on that. We talk about why ultimately, maybe why was it this batch size? Maybe in October 2023, we did a slightly larger batch because we were releasing that Rickhouse proof. So we released the Rickhouse proof kind of throughout our distribution network, and also still had a little bit of that bottled and bond. And so some places have the 100 proof version that's the exact same chart, the same blend ratios on that. And so, each one that we do is going to vary. It's going to let the bourbon kind of speak for what it is, or let kind of what we're trying to do in the market speak for what it is. And so, in general, we've ranged from 50 barrels to 200-ish barrels, depending on what we're doing on each of these bottlings. And so, again, you can check that out on the Distiller's Journal for full details. But as we go, it is what barrels do we have available with that bottled and bond season, and sticking with that. You only have that spring or fall distillation season to work with. And so we'll go through and sample through that Rickhouse. We'll sample the barrels that we have available, and then taste through, highlight ones that maybe we should hold back for our single barrel program. The 1 barrel program is what we call it. And then beyond that, it's create these different batches that could stand up on their own, or that have the story, kind of like what I said, a 4th floor in August of 2023. 3rd floor in March of 2024. Something that either tells the story or stands on its own, or obviously the combination of both. And so that's when we do that. We'll create a bunch of those in the lab here where I'm at, and then have people on site try them and help kind of finalize what we want to do with each one that we do.
Very nice. So from batch to batch, I mean, there's going to be variances. There's going to be differences.
Yeah,
correct?
Ever so slightly different profile. We got the 2 Rickhouses, and we're not rotating barrels, and we're not, creating a specific blend structure where it has to have a certain number of barrels from each floor or anything like that. It's kind of letting the moment of the whiskey speak for itself, and it's not a vintage, but it's more similar to that than it is a standard off the shelf bottling. So we've had, especially here in the Kansas City market, where we have bourbon clubs and groups that have access to a lot more bottlings. We've had them do these kind of lineups, and we see that they're comparing 3 different bottlings of ours and talking about which one was their favorite. And so there are differences when you do them side by side. But ultimately, we're trying to make high quality product that when you try it, it is from the Holladay Distillery and has still that
Yeah.
taste of place that what we're going for.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, I like that idea. There's other brands that kind of do that where they're not blending their barrels to a specific profile. They're letting kind of the barrels guide what they're doing, and the finished product could vary from batch to batch, which I think is really unique. Like you said, you kind of reference vintages. I mean, it's kind of like that with wine, where you're going to have different years, different vintages, different results from the grapes. So I think it's cool that you allow the barrels to do that as well. So that's a lot of fun. So speaking of barrels, I know you guys you don't call it the barrel pick, you call it the
Yeah,
one
so
barrel.
it's again going back to where Missouri bourbon, we're different. We have Rickhouse proof, not foolproof. We also it's one barrel bourbon rather than single barrel. So you're buying one barrel at a time, similar to how Ben Holladay would have shipped it out on that stagecoach. If you would have thought about that, he would have shipped the barrel and it would have went out that way, just one barrel of bourbon at a time. And so that's what we have when we do barrel picks. It's one barrel bourbon. That's what it's called on the label. Yeah, we do that for both mash bills, and it is similar to that Rickhouse proof. It is that full proof, full flavor version of it.
Okay.
When we do these picks on site, we've had some from kind of that first, second floor of the Rickhouse that drop. So our barrel entry proof is 118. We've seen them drop down to about the 110, 111 mark. And then we've also seen them towards the sixth floor go up towards about 127 proof point. So it kind of is all over the board, depending, similar to most other Rickhouses, depending on where it's at in that location. So that true experience of that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I was at the Bourbon Crusaders event back in November last year, and you guys had a barrel up for auction, and the well-known bourbon critic himself, Fred Minnick, bid and bought that barrel. So I think he came out there, was it last month? Because I know he posted a bunch of stuff online on Instagram.
Yeah,
about that.
it was so we're friends with at this point friends. I guess he initially Brett Atlas is a guy from Nebraska, Omaha area, and he's a KU guy. I've mentioned I'm a K-State guy, so he initially didn't like me. I didn't like him, but now we're friends. And so we talked to him and donated the barrel to the auction, and I was terrified. I remember it. It was actually the K-State versus KU football game weekend, and Brett texted us and said, "Hey, just to let you know, Fred bought your barrel." And I'm terrified, right? Like this whole process, it's just been nerve-wracking for me. You got to figure out every step of the process. You got to figure out everything, and it's like, okay, now I got Fred Minnick coming up here to pick a barrel, and that's a lot. So no, but he came out and it went really well. And great guy. Really, all of the Bourbon Crusaders were awesome when they were out here, and so. Cool experience, and definitely every time you get this, or you mentioned you see it on social media, anytime you get publicity like this, it's something that kind of is reassuring. But ultimately, we're making bourbon in Weston, Missouri. It's just not expected. It's one of those things that you just have to keep doing what you can do the best way that you possibly can, and all of this is just added bonus. And so it's been kind of surreal to have all of these experiences where you have podcasts that want to interview you, where you have people that come out to buy barrels. It's just a surreal experience, and so it's been a lot of fun. But every time I do it, it's still nerve-wracking for sure.
Oh, I can't imagine. Yeah, but that's great, man. That's a cool story too. It's a lot of fun. So Matt, we're kind of at the end of round 3, but we still have a couple of things to talk about. But let's talk about this whiskey before we close it out. So what do you get in terms of the palate and the finish on this Rickhouse proof Holladay bourbon?
The soft red wheat is definitely spicy up front. Big, bold flavors, lots of spice and heat right on the front of the palate. Those red wine fruits, the cherries, raspberries, blackberries, like all of those really luscious dark fruits. really come forward and shine on the palate, then to me it takes a turn to almost like think of like pumpernickel bread and some of the
Hmm.
flavors that I would pick up in like a pumpernickel. It really starts to head that direction, kind of like those molasses, almost like a little coffee or like
Hmm.
dark flavors and aromas on there, but also some spice with it as well. Like lots of spice, good heat, good cinnamon, nice long, like just warm finish. I think the wheat does a good job of that. Sometimes it can come across wheated bourbons to me can be a little tannic on the finish. I don't find this one to be tannic in the least. I think the wheat just brings a nice warmth all the way around. Good oily coating on the mouth feel. Just this is an absolute lovely bourbon. This has been my favorite of the rounds.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Matt, this has been really nice. The proof point's right in my wheelhouse. You can tell the proof. I mean, the f- the finish lingers like the other two, but that proof point really stands out
Hmm.
on this. So you know you're drinking a higher proof bourbon on this one. But those notes, like you mentioned, all stick out. Matt. And again, consistency. I think throughout from the nose to the palate to finish, nothing jumps out that's throws you off or takes you down the wrong path. I mean, everything's just consistent. Nice balance on everything. All those red notes, the red fruits, like you talked about, Matt, the spiciness, the cinnamon, and then just that nice, long, lingering finish as well, man. So very nice. So, Kyle, anything else that we left out
No,
on that?
that all kind of nails it. It's this is I'm always drinking one of these red label ones, so that Rickhouse proof, that's just
Yeah.
my go-to as well. I like the proof point. I like that full flavor, but have that robustness coming from that high proof bourbon. So
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we're almost in round three, but before we do that, Kyle, I want to talk about the future. Talk about anything special, notes, things, releases coming up that you can mention or you want to mention, or anything else going on with the future. What it kind of looks like, not just for you, but also for the
yeah,
brand.
so it's I say all of this with the caveat that I think as you're building a brand, you kind of pivot, you change things, you tweak things as you go. But really, for us, the focus has been on these 6 year old products, the bottled and bond, the Rickhouse, and the one barrel program, and then holding back for 10 year as well. And so we will have
Nice.
one of
Nice.
those coming out here in a couple years. So we're 8 years into the process, and by the time we get barrels available and have enough that we can make the product we want to, a couple years plus down the line. And so that's one of those fun projects that I'm looking forward to the most. Then we also just on site have experimented, like most. We continually experiment, I guess, but we've done double oaking or toasted barrel finishing in our ancient
Right.
cave, and so we have a line that we've done. Um, with our Ben Holiday mash bill, we'll repeat with the soft red wheat before deciding if and when we want to do anything in a larger scale as well. And so, uh, so it's kind of a major focus in on what we're doing, but then also the older product, as well as for me personally, and this is the nerdier side, but everything we've tried came from Rickhouse C. We have Rickhouse B that is actually just coming of age later this year. And so it's just kind of continuing down that line of figuring out each floor of that Rickhouse, each uh, both Rickhouses individually, but each floor, how everything ages, and really learning all about this kind of climate of the Missouri region. And so that's kind of the figuring it out, making sure we are masters of our craft and working through whatever we do. So yeah, the 10 year is going to be fun. But
Yeah.
a few other fun things as well down the line. And then who knows, maybe
Very.
way down the line, additional mash bills. So different styles of whiskey if we have storage space. So who knows?
Yeah, very, very nice, man.
Hmm.
So, Kyle, I always ask our guests this question. It's kind of a fun one, I think. But what's been the best part or your favorite part of your journey so far?
Oh, I think for me, it has been. I talk a lot about. I'm my training and my background is more engineering and the problem solving style. And so I think a lot of it is that side of it with bourbon, resurrecting a brand. You can document in detail so much. You can have an idea of how you made it back in the day, and you can talk with people, but every single step in the process, there is something new to learn. There is something, you got to design the filtration method for the final product, or you have to figure out each individual component, each individual step. And so it's just been a lot of fun to actually go through and learn as much detail as you can about each individual step and do that problem solving. And so that has always been my wheelhouse, what I enjoy doing. And so I will always say that. That being said, it's been a lot of fun the last year, getting to talk to people, getting to introduce people to, or I guess last couple years, but introduce people to the brand and getting to know people as well. And so a growing appreciation for that side as the non-people person. But I think ultimately the problem solving and figuring things out as we go is what I've enjoyed the most.
See, I thought you were going to say being the fun spouse in the couple.
That too.
Now,
that too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So where can people find out more information about the brand itself, and where can they find your products?
Yeah, so check out holladaybourbon.com. That's where we talk about every little detail about our history, about Ben Holladay, about our distiller's journal. That is kind of the living, breathing homepage of that. But beyond that, definitely encourage people to come visit us at the Holladay Distillery. We have tours, depending on time of year, but generally Thursday through Sunday time frame, Friday through Sunday, depending. But check out our location. And then, where you can find us, we're in most stores throughout the country. Obviously, our core and our focus is on the Missouri and adjacent markets, but we have distribution throughout the 50 states through various partners, and so we're working towards that. Right. So maybe here or there you may not be able to find it, but we're working on that. That Holladay soft red wheat, that's going to be the one that outside of kind of this Missouri core area will be more readily available. But definitely always encourage people to come visit your friends in the Missouri market, and you can find any of our products here in the great state of Missouri. So if you have any relatives or friends that are here, come visit them and find exclusive offerings for this state that you won't find elsewhere. But yeah, should be.
We've got you now, Kyle. I mean, what else do we need?
Yeah.
We got Kyle. I just bought a Class C RV, man. So
Perfect.
we're like be on the road. Can we park in your parking lot?
Maybe. But if not, we have, again, the Weston Bend State Park is right down the road. It's a half a mile away. So
there you go.
You can camp out right there.
We're set. Exactly. We're set for sure. Mm-hmm. So we'll come out there. We'll do a barrel pick or something,
good.
Right?
Yep,
one barrel.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Kyle, before we wrap it up tonight, any final thoughts, anything you want to share before we get out of here?
Definitely appreciate you having me on, and just want people to give our bourbon, Missouri bourbon, give it a chance, because I hope anyway that it stands up to any other bourbon that you'll have on the market. So very much appreciative of you having me on tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, real quick, I forgot to ask, like pricing wise, what are we looking at with these? Just so people
so the bottled and bond, depending various markets, price point $54 to $59.99 is kind of the retail price point, and then the Rickhouse proof and one barrels are kind of in that $74 to $79.99 price point range, I think.
Yeah,
in most states.
For a 6-year-old bourbon that's that's distilled by one distillery. Yeah. I mean, you can't ask for much more, right? So very good to know that. I appreciate you sharing that information with us. So Matt, final thoughts before we wrap it up tonight, man.
Hey, Kyle, thanks a lot for taking the time to sit down with us, sit down with our guest, walk us through everything that you all have been up to, kind of behind the curtains there at Holladay for the last 6 years, and take us through what you've now put out and the pride that you show behind it. We really enjoyed it. I'm glad that I got to wait to chat with you before I had my first year offerings, and I'm super impressed. Yeah. Really, really liking what you all have done and looking forward to the future.
Thanks.
Yeah, two fanboys here, man. Just go ahead and write it down. Sign us up.
Sounds good.
And if you didn't notice, I sneakily, as you were talking earlier, poured myself yet another glass of the Rickhouse
Awesome.
proof, just because it's so. And Matt will probably steal that bottle and take it home with him.
We'll see.
I had to at least get myself a little bit extra. But Kyle, thank you so much, man, for joining us tonight. We've had a great time. You've been a wonderful guest, man, and very informative. Really appreciate that. You make our job. I mean, guests like you make our job. I don't want to call it a job. You make this so much easier for us, man. I mean, you're passionate about what you do, and you share that, and it comes across, and we love that. It just makes it so much easier for us. That's why we're here. We love to share the stories of the people who are making the bourbon, like you. And it makes it so much easier for us, man. So thank you so much. Like Matt said, man, what you guys are putting out, this is great stuff. I've never had it before, so I'm excited to have it now and get to taste it with you. And it's cool when you get to talk to the guy that actually made it.
Yeah,
and that's, to me, never imagined in my life that, as an attorney, that I would sit down and be able to sit with a master distiller, the guy that's making this bourbon, and talk to him about, how he made it and what his thoughts are. And it's just really cool to be able to do that, man. So this is great stuff. And we'll spread the word of Holladay Bourbon as far as we can, man, because you guys are doing some great stuff, Kyle. And someday we hope to be able to make it out to Weston, Missouri. And check you guys out. I was hoping Fred would invite me on that pick, man, but it just didn't happen. But oh well. So one of these days we'll make it out there. But thank you very much, Kyle, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. So we are the Bourbon Life Podcast, presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate all their support. Appreciate the support of all of our sponsors. We appreciate you, our listeners. Thank you, guys. Whatever time of day it is, like Matt always says, morning, noon, or night, whenever it is you get your Bourbon Life fix. We appreciate you taking the time to listen to our shows. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Also, I have to remind you, please check out The Whiskey Trip. Our good friend Mike, Big Chief, does his podcast every Tuesday. It comes out. So check that out. He does some great shows as well. And he's just a good friend. So check him out. He's on Instagram and Facebook as well. But give his podcast a follow as well. And I guess with that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full. May you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.
Welcome to the kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company, where every visit is a celebration of tradition and flavor. Did you know that the kitchen table is nestled right within the heart of the distillery? That's right. You can experience the essence of James B. Beam's legacy while savoring their delectable dishes. Join them every Wednesday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. for a culinary journey like no other. Planning a special event? Let the kitchen table be your host, creating unforgettable memories for you and your guests. And don't miss their exclusive Behind the Beam tour and monthly Claremont Supper Club events, which will feature their little book release at the May 16th event. For more information and reservations, visit beamdistilling.com. The kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company. Come as a friend, leave as family.